Good morning or good evening. Hello, hello.
Good morning, Luang Por.
How are you doing? There we go. Okay. How should we start, Vita? Should we start with the Itipiso? Would that be a nice way to start?
Yes, please, Luang Por.
Is my volume okay?
Your volume is good.
And the video is okay, good enough.
That's right, Luang Por. Perhaps, Luang Por, it's been a fresh new morning for you in the monastery. Before we begin, could we all please pay respects to you, since it's a bright new Asalha Puja day for you, whilst it's the end of the day for us. Okay?
All right.
So
yes,
please. Just let us all now pay respects to Luang Por by bowing 3 times. Bow.
Okay.
Bow. So morning greetings to you, Luang Por.
And evening greetings to you.
And afternoon greetings to the rest of the
whatever
world.
The planet's doing.
Right. So Luang Por, yes, we may begin now. We can begin with Itipiso.
Okay. So Venerable Mama Siri is with me here now, so we'll chant and you join along if you'd like. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vicacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati sata devama Sanam Buddho Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Santitiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanaiko Pachata Vedita Bovinyo Hiti Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujupatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Nyaya Patipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sami Chipatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yadidang Chatari Purisa Yugani Ta Purisa Bhukala Yesa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttara Punya Ketang Lokasati Tipiso Bhagava Arahang Masamputo Vicacharana Sampan Sugato Alokavido Anut Tarwa Purisa Dhamma Sarati Deva Manusanam Puto Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Santitiko Akaliko Siko Hopanaiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyo Hiti Supatipanno Bhagava Sawaka Sangho Ujupatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Anyaya Patipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sami Chipatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yadidang Chatari purisa yugani atta purisa Kalaye sabhagavato savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyake lokasati tipiso bhagava arahang samputo vichacharana sampanno suga lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhammasarati Deva manusanam Buddha Bhagavati Sawa Katva Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanaiko Pacha Vedita Boa Vinyuhiti Subhati Pannoa Bhagavat Sawaka Sangho Ujjapati Pannoa Bhagavatoa Sawaka Sangho Anyaya Bhagavatoa Savaka Sangho Sami Chipati Pannoa Bhagavat Sawaka Sangho Yadidang Chatari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Kalahe Sabhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutta Punya Ketang Lokasati. Shansian, you want to do the honors?
Morning, Luang Por. We will now request for Dhamma talk. Brahmachaloka Dipati Sampati Katanjaliya Divarangaya Jata Santi Nasata Paraja Jadika Dese Tudama Anukampi Mampaja
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassa. So good morning and good evening and good afternoon and hello. I just yesterday I was quite tired, and I was working on. We have a canoe, a wood canvas canoe that I was repairing with Nirasso, and I got my brain baked in the sun. So then it was kind of impatient yesterday in the Q&A. So I apologize if I caused any confusion. I was roasted. So Jesslyn, if my answer was confusing, my apologies. But life's that way, isn't it? You know, you give it your best shot, and it doesn't quite come out the way you wanted. But if you think about it, that was your best shot, because that's the best you could do at the time. And you might think it could have been different, but it wasn't. So that doesn't help. But you can reflect as a human being, okay, that's an area where I get heedless, or that's an area where I kind of I'm not able to really know the mood of the mind, and I just come from it. And that's the area I work with. So that's the whole process of craft or learning about yourself, is seeing that mistakes you make, and the mistakes, if another person doesn't recognize the mistake, it doesn't mean that you don't know that, where you're coming from has been unskillful. Why? Because you get a result, and the result is like it's a lingering, right? It's a lingering of a storyline which keeps going, and so on. So in Thai they say pit pen crew, mistake is teacher. So we have it's an interesting differentiation in between, say, remorse and guilt. So feeling bad about having done something doesn't really change you, it worsens you. Just like feeling bad in some negative way, it just creates negative patterns. But saying, okay, I want to develop this craft of being a human being. I want to do it as well as I can, because that seems to be the project this lifetime. And this is an area where I can be more mindful or whatever. So Asalha Puja is the great celebration for us of the Buddha's first teaching, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and in about 2 hours' time, I think we'll listen to a recorded rendition of that from Amaravati. So the sutta itself, I would suggest that everyone know it very well, not the Pali, but the import of it, the intent of it, and what it's kind of speaking to. And what it's speaking to is the Buddha's way of giving us direction so that we can realize ultimate truth. And interestingly enough, of course, it begins with the very human feeling of discontent. So we have the idea of dukkha. Now, the word dukkha is used in various ways in the Pali Canon, and so it's good to sort of parse that out. I think not just to be clever about words, but to see that in different contexts it's used in different ways. So last night Malika asked me about Vedana, and Vedana, in the five khandhas, or the one of the Satipatthanas, the foundations of mindfulness. Vedana is defined as the sense of, I think in psychology they call it the affect, the thing that is, the experience is attractive or repelling in various degrees of severity. So something can be very, very horribly repelling, something can be exquisitely attractive, and then it can be marginally attractive, neutral, marginally repulsive, and neutral. So there's a whole range, isn't there? And that's human experience. And that's happening all the time. Ice cream has a Vedana, the taste of ice cream has a Vedana, the smell of burning rubber has a Vedana, a feeling of love has a Vedana, a feeling of hatred has a Vedana. So it's something that pervades all human experience. And understanding that is very important. And here the word dukkha and sukha mean that affect. So the feeling of say, physical discomfort is dukkha vedana. And the feeling of physical pleasure is sukha vedana. Now, when you come to the Four Noble Truths, you have that the first noble truth is that there is suffering. And this is the word, it's the Arya Satya dukkha, and it's not the same as Vedana dukkha. Because Arya Satya dukkha is the suffering that we create on top of the world's, on top of the natural experiences of being incarnate in a sense body. So I think we all realize that you can feel uncomfortable, and that's dukkha vedana, but you don't have to suffer, correct? And that's an important insight, right? and especially in meditation, you're sitting and you're feeling uncomfortable. You know, it's not life-threatening or it's not that difficult, and you've had experience, and you don't shift, and you use, oh, this is dukkha vedana. Dukkha vedana feels this way, and you abide with it, and it goes to peace. And why it goes to peace? Because with dukkha vedana, you also have habitually tanha, and tanha is craving, wanting. And obviously, you don't want discomfort. Biologically, you're conditioned not to have it, to get away from discomfort. And yet life has very much discomfort. And that takes you to the second noble truth, that not only is there suffering, but suffering has to be understood. And why am I suffering with the dukkha vedana? It's because I'm attaching to the feeling of not wanting it. So I'm adding something to it. It's not just discomfort, it's the wanting. So we start to look at the wanting, and that's a very good example of how Four Noble Truths is used. You practice with this, don't you, all the time, with your body, and you're sitting, and you're meditating, and you observe discomfort. And over the years, you've learned just to move on. It doesn't make you peaceful, and you're interested now in the Four Noble Truths. And so what's the suffering here? And you look and you observe, oh, there it is. That's me not wanting this. And you see there's an extra tension, and you begin to observe that. And you don't run away from it. You don't distract it. You witness it, you witness it, you witness it. And because it's not life-threatening, it's not that bad. Quite often your mind becomes actually quite peaceful because you've stayed focused. But most importantly, you've stayed focused on the very feeling of not wanting. And you've known it, even if you can't label it, you've known it by being aware, by being aware. And then you get to the third noble truth, the cessation of this negative wanting. As it ceases, your mind has peace. Now, not because you rejected comfort and sought out distraction and comfort, not because of that, no, because now you've been aware of the pattern of suffering, its cause, and its end. So it's quite simple. It's quite simple in that way. And if you can integrate that into your inner world, I like to think of the contemplative life as a kind of multitasking that, like, let's say the example of last night for me, I knew I was feeling tired. I knew I was feeling restless, and I was trying to be aware of that, but the speech got a bit away from me. And so this is just the way it is. But I think that capacity to multitask, as it were, you can be doing something, you can be in a committee meeting or something and noticing you're getting restless, and you're trying to notice that restlessness, aren't you? Or whatever. And that's where if you have a good background in understanding how the suffering of life takes place inwardly, not just outwardly, in your own heart, in your own mind, in your own family, in your being, you understand that pattern. Even having learned it in a meditation session, you want that kind of inner contemplation to always be going on, always. And we can do that. We can do that. We have that. We're quite clever beings, we humans. So the study of it is important because it intellectually gives you a framework for how to approach life's inner experiences, and that we call pariyatti, study. So the first truth is that this sense of discontent that we have needs to be understood. And Luang Por Viradhammo always phrases it very, very nicely. He says, stand under, and like accept it or make it. I like the word make it conscious. Make conscious the feeling of discontent that you have now, and then from that you have the perspective of right understanding. Now, right understanding in terms of you're seeing this as dharma, rather than being lost in the sense of the story and the narrative and the sense of self. So understanding dukkha is not getting rid of it. It's not judging it. It's saying discontent feels this way. It's an object in awareness. And that training that we do around neutrality, when I say, listen to sound, notice that it's an object, that training prepares the mind for any kinds of discontent that we have throughout the day. That's why that neutral kind of training that you have in a meditation session, or when life isn't stressful, or when you're not kind of caught up, is very important to keep to that sense that life is like this, the suchness of this moment, and things are changing, because that becomes not only your refuge of peace, but also the platform of insight. It's like a stable platform that you can see what's going on. And then the samudaya, the second noble truth, that there is a cause. Obviously, that's important. That this is not something that you can't understand, but you do have to understand the cause of it, and that sense of investigation is not. I mean, you've learned it already, okay? You studied the books, you studied the texts. Now your investigation isn't analysis. You're actually silently observing. You have this discontent. What's going on? You're feeling discomfort, or you're restless, or whatever. What is it? What is it? What is it? And you observe. And then you see the resistance to what it is, or the wanting of something else. And that's what we mean by vipassana. That's what we mean by insight. It's nothing, it's just very, very human to have insight about why we suffer, because we want to be happy people and such like. So insight is a natural result of this capacity to observe Dharma. And now when you take samudaya, the cause of suffering is attachment to desire, you have to unpack that, right? You have to figure out, okay, what does the Buddha mean by tanha? What is that? What is craving? And then so the question that people ask is well, is it okay to want to eat? Yeah, that's okay. Seems like a good idea. What if I'm thirsty? Can I drink water? Probably a good idea as well. How about oxygen? and so sometimes, or can I go to university and get a degree, or should I love my kids or not? These are kind of, I'm being facetious about it, but understanding that there is intelligent desire, and there's desire which is based upon ignorance, not understanding. So then the reflection isn't a kind of feeling guilty about desire, or thinking that you're wrong for feeling desire. It's understanding desire. Right? So it's very much the Four Noble Truths, often seen as a kind of education about desire, an investigation into it and what it is to have the desire. So there's aspiration. So you aspire to be a better person. I aspire to be a better person. That doesn't have to be egotistical. It can be very, very skillful. It can be developing the barmi and so on. So you could say that's a kind of desire. But obviously that desire doesn't cause me suffering. And it actually gives me joy, gives me reason, gives me purpose, gives me function. So that's not what we're talking about. So what we are pointing to is the best way is to look at how it's broken up in that second noble truth. And so we use the word tanha. You all know that word, tanha, and in English text it's described as craving. And that's really what you have to differentiate, the nature of wholesome desire and the nature of tanha. And tanha is attachment to tanha. It's always a kind of selfing. It's always involved with me and what I want and what I don't want. And so the three ways, if you want to think about it, one way is kama tanha, craving for sense experience. And I've recently kind of also defined it for myself. And I think we're always doing this with the text. We're kind of looking at it and say, what is it about that that's important for me to look at? And I would say that the consumption, the preoccupation with sense experience is to some extent kama tanha, attachment to kama tanha. Because if I'm always just in the consumer mode, whether I'm consuming Netflix or sense experience, or I'm always out in this world of consumption, then I'm as I say, I'm not available for nibbana. I'm not available for peace because I'm just always consuming things. And that's not a moral issue. That's not a moral issue. That's a distraction issue. And you can see the great pain in our society where people don't know how to not distract. They don't know how to stop. They don't know how to meditate. They're just busy filling their minds all the time. So the sense of filling your mind and needing to fill your mind is the issue around kama tanha and attachment to that. So typically, I know we monks probably talk too much about this, but iPhones is an interesting one in terms of kama tanha. And many monasteries, most monasteries will say, well, just leave your phone in the office. We're fortunate, we have very poor cell phone reception, so it's a kind of natural governor here. And but I know the venerable in the German monastery, he has a bucket. He calls it his iPhone bucket. And when you come to the monastery, he presents the bucket to you, and you present your iPhone. And then when you leave, you get your iPhone back. Hopefully, you get the right one. Now that and think about what the result is. Maybe like if you're not into that technology, then it's not a good analogy. But if you're younger and you've grown up with that, you're always looking at it, well, what happens? Well, kama tanha, the craving for sense experience, has been constantly stimulated by objects. Interesting sports videos about the Olympics, or horrifying data about climate change, or worrying situations about COVID, or cat videos, or choose it. You can find it. You get everything, and that's the problem. So you can scintillate. You can stimulate the sense desires constantly. And then what happens when you come to a horrible place like a monastery and you have to give up your iPhone? And what happens is you give it away and you feel very, very restless. Why? Because the momentum of your conscious experience has always been in engaging in sense objects in a way which is pleasurable. And you can just be leafing through things, looking for pleasure, looking for pleasure, looking for pleasure, looking for pleasure. And you could see that when you finally are sort of, you take on a self-discipline not to do that, or the monastery gives you the discipline, then you have this desire for sense experience. And that's again, it's not a moral issue, it's a mind issue. It's a mind which is restless and needs scintillation, stimulation. So what happens when you then enter into that kind of renunciation, because that's what you're practicing. You're practicing giving something up. So actually, you're giving up the object of your sense distraction. You're giving up the object of kama tanha. So this begins the beginning of non-attachment. But of course, the momentum is still there. You still want that experience, whatever it might be. And that's where unfulfilled desire challenges you. Now you have the itching and scratching syndrome, which I was talking about. You have the unfulfilled desire. And of course, the reflection is that I need to bear with unfulfilled desire to see the ultimate end of desire in terms of tanha, in terms of kama tanha. And we've all done that. You've not wanted to do things as a parent, but you've done it because it's for the goodness of your family. You've not wanted to do your studies, but you've done it because you forego short-term satisfaction for long-term gain. I mean, that's a common, isn't it? Anyone who has self-discipline does that. And here we're even contemplating that more profoundly. And this is what renunciation is about. Renunciation isn't just about the robe and the haircut. It's about a whole attitude. I just shaved my head half an hour ago. It's a whole attitude of aspiring to nibbana, not settling for anything less than that. And then that aspiration cannot be out into the world of sense experience. It has to be somewhere here. And then you have a kind of motivation. Okay, those bald-headed guys are taking my iPhone, but maybe that's a good one. Maybe this will be interesting. So rather than resenting me, then you're in your room and you're feeling restless. What do I do? What do I do? And so, I mean, people tell me on the retreats that, and who was telling me? I think one of the monks, he's doing a retreat in the forest in Chithurst, and he's decided not to read. He hasn't got any books, but he's got a wood fire, and he's got old newspapers. He's like, he can't stop reading these old newspapers. He's kind of going through all the ads and everything because he wants something to do. He wants to distract himself. Then he runs out of newspapers. And so renunciation is this witnessing to kama tanha in a reasonable way, not in a kind of way where you hurt yourself. That's where it doesn't work, where you get, what you'll find is like monks for whom monasticism, I would say, doesn't work. They take on very stringent and tough ascetic practices, and then they set the bar so impossibly high, and no one else is telling them to do it, and they give up this and they give up that, and they aditan this and they aditan that, and I'm not going to do this, and we all say, oh, this guy's going to hit a brick wall. This isn't going to work. And sure enough, after a few years, they burn out, and they think, it's too tough for me, but they haven't had moderation. They've created their own asceticism, which the Buddha didn't even ask for. And then they get caught in self-judgment, and they, oh, I can't do this. And we say, oh, you can't just relax a bit. So it's not like just being rigidly ascetic, it's being reflective. That's the real key, it's being reflective. So like if I can't have the distraction, and I let's say I make an adhitthana, I make a determination not to take on to do something which is essentially distracting, say, and I do that for some period of time, then I reflect on craving, the arising of craving, the arising of wanting, the feeling of that, and then what does unfulfilled desire feel like? I reflect on it. Then I can do adhitthanas very, very well. I can do determinations very, very well. But if I just think I mustn't want this, I mustn't want this, I mustn't want this, that's not reflection, that's ego, isn't it? Okay. The other is just, well, it really doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. There is some self-discipline required, but it's the middle way. So that's kama tanha. Bhava tanha is that sense of being a person and becoming a person, and the sense of self-identity and all the ways that might be defined in terms of meditation. Bhava tanha comes up for monks a lot with these writings about attainments. Whether you have jhana or whether you have sotapatti, anagami, sakadagami, arahant, 1 jhana, 2 jhana, 3 jhana, 4 jhana, that kind of thing. And the whole attainment mind, or it comes up in, if you've had a really fulfilling meditative experience, your mind really went quiet, or your mind had sort of universal loving kindness, and it was a very significant experience, maybe even life-changing, and then you try to reproduce it as from desire, not from wisdom. And you can be confident, and you can produce results in meditation which are not coming from desire, because you know how to do it. Just like you can produce a good meal. You have people coming for dinner sometime in the future when COVID's over, if you still remember how to cook, and you can prepare a good meal because you know how to prepare a good meal. That's not coming from bhava tanha. Bhava tanha is, I want a good meal, I want a good meal. And so in meditation, what happens is most commonly you have some experience, or you read about some experience, or someone tells you that's the experience you must get, and then you try to get it. And then you're no longer mindful. You're not aware of the present moment. You're caught in a projection of a future possibility. You don't even know maybe what it is. Maybe you have a sort of vague memory of it, and you keep looking for it. And because you're looking for it, you're not looking at what is. And because you're not looking at what is, you're suffering all the time. Because why? You're attached to bhava, tanha. It's obvious, isn't it? Right? And in meditation, that can be very clear. In larger life situations, you want to, maybe you want to progress in your company, and you want a good position. You want prestige, or you want a bigger salary. And these are not wrong things. There's nothing wrong with it. But when does it become suffering, I would say? That's the way you could evaluate that. When does my desire to progress in the company and succeed and be successful, when does that become suffering? And or the when does it afflict? Maybe you don't even notice when it's suffering for you, but it afflicts others. So our sense of the practice is not just about my mind and my consciousness, it's about you too. So when does my desire for success hurt you? When does my inattention to your needs hurt you? And that's a good way to reflect on, well, yeah, I'm related to you as well as to myself. That's very important. And so the practices of the Brahma Viharas are honored and uplifted. And so that when professional success becomes divisive or hurtful or somehow, kind of really damages family life, then you say, well, wait a minute. What is my larger responsibility here? I don't have that kind of economic background where I need to succeed economically, because people just end up feeding me. So, and I don't have to pay for a mortgage. But I do, I've had like wanting to have a successful monastery and wanting to have disciples, and that's just pretty natural. And so, well, that's not what I ordained for. I didn't ordain for some kind of to be a social entity, a successful entity. So success and failure then are kind of, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, and that takes a while to learn, doesn't it? You don't just learn it overnight, because you're young and you've got energy and you want to do stuff, and the ego comes in there. So bhava tanha is this desire to become. I think its ramifications also come through when you have ideas which we call like asmimana, the more subtle sense of self. So you have Sakaya Ditti personality view, the kind of gross ego view, but also in meditation you have the what we call the fetter of asmimana, or mana is a more subtle sense of self, and that's the whole sense of the doer, doing something to become something. That's much more subtle than the other, and that you begin to touch by witnessing and seeing this desire to get something. I mean, it's very subtle, or it's a very sense of a doer, and you begin to question that. And that comes further down the track in meditation, but it is interesting, and that's what we call asmimana. So there are levels always of these things. And then the third, so you have kamatanha, bhavatanha, vibhavatanha. Vibhava is, I think, the homework project I gave to many people on, like at the start of this new year, at Christmas time, was the project of looking at resistance. And so what I was pointing to was the vibhava tanha. And you could see how, the genius of the Buddha for me, many things, is his capacity to take this really complex thing about being a human being, and the complexity of human consciousness, and all the emotions and all the stuff we experience, and he kind of condenses it down as this three things you got to be aware of. bhava, vibhava, and kama. If you don't attach to that, you realize non-desire, and that makes you available to the unconditioned, to nibbana. But as long as you're out and chasing the world of change with tanha, you're looking in the wrong place. And it won't be there, it's not there. So, he kind of takes it all down to these three very simple but profound energies we experience, mentalities we experience as human beings. So if you get one, that's 2/3. Pretty good, right? You get 33% done, 33.33333%. That has been accomplished. So that's why, like when you take a more, when you in the reflective or contemplative path, you're not so concerned about just the experience. That's maybe if you're an Olympic athlete. If you're an Olympic athlete, you're really concerned about the minutiae of that experience because you want to get the gold medal, or at least do well, right? That's the concern about experience. Now we're stepping back. We're concerned about experience, but we're concerned about some kind of underlying structures within the life of experience, which if we notice them and we understand them and take the Buddhist suggestion of, say, in this sense, letting go leads to liberation. So any experience, you can look at tanha. Any experience, you can look at Vedana. So all of life has this opportunity for practice. So the samudaya is the understanding of those three, and then the understanding of non-grasping. And so that's very important. And a lot of people, I think, make a mistake there where they think that non-grasping is non-feeling. That's a mistake that is often made, in the sense that, like, if I feel impatient, that I'm grasping. No, the impatience comes because I'm tired and I burnt and I roasted my brains in the sunshine. This is the result. That's just human physiology. This body, this mind, it's emotional, it has mental states, gets exhausted and so on. So that's not grasping. That's just the way it is. So grasping comes about, of course, of somehow not knowing it as a khandha, not knowing it as a sankhara, and somehow getting so involved in it that you become it. So the like, say, vibhava tanha, not wanting something, and that comes up into the mind, that's nature. That's just the nature of conditioning. But what is attachment is not noticing it as an object, becoming the subject, attaching to it. So the upadana is a very, very important concept. And as I was saying to Malika yesterday, we have in the paticca samuppada of phassa, vedana, tanha, upadana, and birth, old age, sickness, and death, grasping. So upadana comes about through the not seeing tanha, and tanha not seeing how Vedana is working. So you can see how you really need a really refined sense of attention here to do this. And who can do this? Who can do this? So that's why you need to meditate and calm the mind so you can see these things when they do arise. So the third noble truth then is when these things cease. And so I can notice like impatience. And that's not grasping. Impatience is a khandha. Grasping would be, I shouldn't feel impatient, or just act on it all the time. And that just becomes a habit. And then I'm reborn as an impatient person. But just the feeling of impatience is like this. Now, this is where the second and third noble truths take a lot of work, because you have to bear witness to the unpleasant. So impatience is unpleasant. It comes from exhaustion or tiredness or brain fog or whatever you want. And it's natural because it arose, it belongs. So the issue is not that you don't feel, because that's impossible. The issue is that you remain aware of change. It's one way. So when you're aware of change, that's letting go. As opposed to thinking that letting go is not feeling. So to check it out in your own mind, in your own sense of Dharma, is letting go for you been defined that you don't feel anger, or that you don't feel fear, or that you just feel positive emotions? Is that how you define letting go? Or is letting go defined as knowing change? And that's a much more difficult definition. The other is a very repressive definition. I shouldn't be this, I shouldn't be that. But to know change, then you're not grasping, then whatever the condition is, it arises and ceases according to causes and conditions. And so samudaya and nirodha, the cessation, is kind of there all the time, the cessation of craving, because there are times where you don't want anything and you're quite okay with this moment. And the more you can just plug into that sense of non-desire. And again, the way I like to teach meditation is to listen to sound, and then non-desire feels like this. I'm not looking for an experience. I'm not trying to get rid of any experience. It's like this. And if you can just touch those moments of non-desire after a thought, at the end of a thought, and so, oh, yeah, this is what non-desire feels like. That becomes a background or a mirror to desire. Because then you see, oh, desire is actually suffering. It's like when I want something and I'm holding on to it, that's actually suffering. And you get more and more clear. Why? Because you notice non-desire. You saw the beauty of non-desire, and it becomes desirable. And then you try to get non-desire, and then you get all confused. Because logically, you can't get non-desire with desire. So we have these peaceful moments, and we meditate, oh, that's it, non-desire. And then the next meditation, you're trying to get non-desire, and you've lost the plot. Isn't it true? I think it's true for everyone, yeah. So that's why you like, the Zen teaching, beginner's mind, just begin again. Here I am. Don't know what I'm doing, but this is what I feel like this. So that takes you to the fourth noble truth, which is the path. Right understanding, right thought, right action, right speech, right livelihood, right mindfulness, right concentration, right effort. At the last three kind of, I never get it quite right. Terrible. But the order doesn't matter, does it? Right? Because it's not a high school examination. Again, it's the reflection that matters. So, like Luang Por Viradhammo always has very, very interesting reflections on right understanding. And like if you think about his statement, it's like this. That is existential right understanding. Existential in the sense your existence feels this way right now, and I'm not defining it as good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just knowing life feels this way, and that's understanding. That's understanding in an experiential way because I'm present to this moment, even if I don't understand what I'm doing. I know, oh, this is what I don't understand what I'm doing feels like. Huh? Even if like when you're, let's say if you're walking in the forest here and you get confused at which path you should go along and you feel confused, you understand that you feel confused. You don't know where to go. That's a different issue. So when Luang Por says to us, it's like this, it's the beginning of right understanding. Now, right understanding is, again, samadhi. In the Pali, I personally don't like right view because it does sound too much like a dogma. It's used and it's not wrong, but personally, I think one has affinity personally to language. Some language works, some doesn't work. So right understanding, then you can see deepens if I can sustain. It's like this, because that's where insight comes from. It's like this, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this. And then there's suffering. I start to feel some conflict. And I make conscious the feeling of conflict, because this is what the first noble truth is asking me to do. Stand under, understand. So there's conflict. Conflict feels this way. It's like this, it's like this, it's like this. And then, what's this contraction? What's going on? and I watch and I watch. I don't want the world to be this way, or I want the world to be another way. Okay, now that's the contraction. And then, but it is like this. I see. So where's the tanha? Okay, yeah, I get it. Insight. So right understanding begins to deepen into a perspective on life which is liberating, because you understand. Right understanding, obviously. And then you get you get a teaching of reflection. So the right understanding of this enhanced by study. So Luang Por says to us, check out uncertainty. Really check it out, like moment by moment. What happens if you look at life that way? So you imbue the sense that it's like this with an observation. So is he right? Is it really uncertain? And you listen to sound and you feel your emotions and you look at your social relationships and you see, yeah, it's always changing, isn't it? And then you see that, wow, when I take that perspective of right understanding, that which has a nature to arise has a nature to cease, and I witness it that way, actually, my mind is peaceful. Okay, so right understanding now is imbued with the whole language of attention and the way I can pay attention to sustain right understanding. And you can see that just becomes deeper and deeper around your own personal issues, around the kind of ways that you get caught up. And so you notice some mood coming up. You say, okay, be aware. This is dangerous. This mood has got me in trouble 6 million times. You're not denying the mood, but you have enough right understanding personally of the mood that you have to be very, very mindful. Very, very mindful there. So that, of course, it leads to sammasankappa, right thinking, or right intention, and thinking in terms of right understanding. So first and foremost, when Luang Por says it's like this, that's a thought, but it's a thought which grounds you in right understanding. And then you have the thought, okay, how can I sustain this right understanding? And that's where you get the ideas around right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. How can I sustain this sense of presence around the way things are? And then you do meditation practices to calm and compose the mind. You make suggestions to yourself of being more mindful. You put forth effort in areas where you're maybe careless or sloppy. You deepen your capacity to be present, right? Mindfulness. So all those three are the, where meditation and reflection are always working. Effort, presence or mindfulness, and concentration. The word concentration I don't like so much. I like the word composure and presence. I find that better because I think that word for me is a broader word than concentration. Concentration is a more narrow word. But my life is not lived in constant concentration. Sometimes I am, and sometimes I need to be more broad. But I can be composed. I can be collected. I can do that. So composure and collection, I look at sammasamadhi. Again, it's just language. Mindfulness is like not just functional control, but mindfulness of anicca, say. Like present with the Dharma. And then the virya, the effort, is to kind of remember that, to imbue my mind with intentions toward that, and so on. And then the whole Four Noble Truths are really one package. They're constantly reinforcing each other, all the factors. You have more and more subtle understandings, but it's beautiful teaching. It's very, very beautiful teaching. And it's, I think, the genius of the Buddha is that he takes the common human problem that we all want to get out of suffering, and he lays it down for you. He says, yeah, and suffering can take you to nibbana, can take you to realization. I mean, that's genius, isn't it? And something that you don't have to be Buddhist even to contemplate this. You can be secular, you can be a Muslim or a Christian. It's not dogmatic. That's what's so very appealing, I think, to all of us. And for me, it's pragmatic. It's not a doctrine I have to believe in, a whole set of principles that I have to believe in. It's like really, really good tools, so very pragmatic. All right, it's almost 7 o'clock my watch. So let's end there. And Lucian, do you want to do anything? Okay, Bita.
Thank you, Luang
Shall we
Por.
leave it there? Huh?
Let's all say 3 sadhus together.
Okay.
Andamayam ovadakatha sadhu karang kadamase sadhu 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 anumodami.
So please have a break, do some meditation or have a coffee. Don't look at your iPhone. And we shall convene in 1 hour, correct, Bita? And then we'll listen to the Dhammacakka Sutta, correct? And then we'll see what comes from after that. All right, so we'll see you later. Bye for now.